After resumed debate, the Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Internet. What a credible invention, Madam Speaker. All the information in the world in the palm of our hands. And just as the creation of the printing press in the 1400s changed the course of history forever by allowing information to be disseminated to the masses rather than just to the elites of society, and it brought literacy to millions of people, so too has the Internet revolutionized how we exchange ideas, amplify our voices, and it's brought freedom of knowledge and expression to billions of people. But before the printing press, censorship of dangerous ideas by the elites was easy. All you had to do was round up the heretics with fringe, unacceptable views and hang them high in town square and burn their handwritten notebooks. But with the printing press, dangerous ideas were shared far and wide, leading to the Protestant Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, the French Revolution, the Age of Enlightenment, just to name a few. And likewise, the Internet and social media has helped spark political revolutions and political movements. It's empowered brave resistance to foreign dictators, like our Ukrainian friends against Vladimir Putin in their courageous fight. Really, social media has helped empower that and exchange information at a rapid pace. So we really do live in extraordinary times, Madam Speaker, and this is especially true for our online Canadian content creators. Influencers is now a career choice, and Canadian musicians, painters, bakers, commentators, and do-it-yourselfers can access billions of people and share their ideas and creations with the click of a button. All you need is an internet connection and a smartphone. Well, you do need one more thing, actually. You need a government that believes in your freedom to do so. And unfortunately, Canadians are experiencing a government who is trying desperately to control the internet. From the very wild and extreme Online Harms Bill to Bill C-18, the Online News Act, and now Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, which we are debating today, Canada's Liberal government is really butting into every aspect of our online world and proclaiming it's here to help. And it will show those big, scary boss streaming services like Netflix and Spotify who the boss is and save us all from scary, dangerous ideas on the internet. But in reality, these three internet bills all have the same aim: to regulate what you see when you open your cell phone apps, Madam Speaker. And now Canadians may remember how Bill C-10 exploded in controversy last year but died on the order paper. And it's back now in C-11. And while the Liberals claim they have fixed the concerns from C-10, really C-11 is just a wolf in sheep's clothing. The issue with C-11 was its control of user-generated content, which is, the posts and the videos that we share and upload on social media. The Liberals say that that issue was removed in C-11, but experts don't agree. Notable communications law professor Michael Geist has pointed out that the CRTC has the power with C-11 to subject user-generated content to regulation should it so choose. And if folks at home, if you're asking what CRTC is, it's the Canada Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission that has heavily controlled what we see on TV and what we hear on the radio over the past 50 years. Bill C-11 essentially expands the CRTC powers to streaming giants like Netflix and Spotify, but also to podcasts, audiobooks, and news channels that we consume online. And it won't just control Canadian-produced versions of those things, but anything from anywhere in the world that Canadians want to consume online in Canada as well. And more than that, C-11 in fact provides the Liberal cabinet the power to tell the CRTC how to regulate streaming platforms, how to define what Canadian content is, and the general policy direction of these internet controls. And it's important to note that Cabinet does not have this power currently over TV and radio. This will be a new power. Under the existing law, the CRTC is not directed by Cabinet. It is independent so that it can be free from political interference, which is very important, Madam Speaker. But this will no longer be the case under C-11. Cabinet will have the power over what we see on the internet, which represents an unprecedented expansion of government power. And really, I think the bottom line, Madam Speaker, is that Canadian creators have more freedom now, before this bill comes in, ever before that they did with TV and radio. You can become a YouTube star. It's far more accessible than ever trying to break into network television. So why would the Liberals want to impose the same CRTC regulations that they have on TV and radio onto our online platforms. It really doesn't make sense if we're talking about boosting our Canadian content creators. And we know that over 90% of those watching our Canadian content are actually from outside of Canada. And the number of sort of influencers online in Canada earning $100,000 a year or more is rapidly increasing every single year. So I really do believe the last thing that our online content creators need is the Liberal government sticking their fingers into the regulation controls and messing around with the algorithms that have facilitated the content of our homegrown creators being able to share their content with the world. And YouTube, in fact, itself has alerted the online community and issued strong warnings to this Liberal government about the negative impacts of Bill C-11, that it risks downgrading Canadian content in other countries because if we artificially bump up Canadian content here, and for whatever reason that Canadian content isn't catching the interest of Canadians, the way the algorithm works, it'll actually downgrade that content abroad in competing markets like the United States, for example, which a lot of influencers in Canada depend on. So I do feel, though, that C-11 isn't the only thing we need to be worried about. It's worrisome, but there are two other bills as well. There's C-18, which has some issues. It's the Online News Act, which has been criticized as interfering in the independence of our news media because it controls how we share news articles on platforms like Facebook by forcing these platforms to pay news agencies every time we share a news article. Lots of people share news on their Facebook platforms, which it's odd that they would need this bill because it's great for news agencies when you share their content. It takes you right to their website. It's free advertising. And Australia tried to do this. They tried to do the same thing as C-18. And what happened? Well, Facebook played hardball and banned all sharing of news articles on Facebook until they were able to negotiate something with the Australian government. So there is serious issues here, and Facebook has raised, look, we're not opposed to doing the same thing in Canada. They raised that in committee. So really it's just more control from government, C-18, but that's not even half as bad as the online harms bill, Madam Speaker. This is a very scary internet control bill. In the last parliament, it was known as Bill C-36, and it died on the order paper when that unnecessary $600 million election was called, but the Liberals are trying to bring it back again. And now it is important to say that I welcome a conversation of how we can better fight terrorism that is organizing online and we can better enforce existing laws where things are considered fraud or libel or incite violence, and in particular child pornography or the sharing of intimate images online without consent. Those are all very important conversations and legitimate issues that need to be addressed. However, the Online Harms Bill would create a government regulator of speech on the internet that would decide what is harmful and must be removed. It is very subjective, depending on really who's behind the curtain dictating what is harmful. So really this bill, and I took a direct quote from Andrew Coyne in the Globe and Mail, who said the bill is direct state regulation of online content. Pretty significant. So, and then Twitter even went on to say, this is really concerning, that people around the world have been blocked from accessing Twitter and other services in a similar manner as the one proposed by Canada by multiple authoritarian governments like China, North Korea, and Iran, for example, under the false guise of online safety, impeding people's right to access information. Twitter is literally comparing this online harms bill to China, North Korea, and Iran, Madam Speaker. It's pretty shocking. And I really do feel that with the Liberals throwing around terms like misinformation and disinformation whenever they don't like something that we say, and free speech we know is constantly under attack, and really anything you say these days can offend someone, I am concerned about what bills like C-11 and the Online Harms Bill will do to our freedom of expression online. And with my remaining minute, Madam Speaker, I'll just conclude that, although society has evolved, before the creation of the printing press and the establishment, the press establishment or the establishment would, essentially murder heretics with unacceptable views, and they would burn books later on. We're not immune to authoritarian control of our freedom of expression, and we would also do well to remember that rights and freedoms are not always eliminated in one fell swoop. Often governing authorities will just pick at them bite by bite under the auspices of it's for your own good, we know better than you, we'll keep you safe. We see this happen in China. It's happening in Hong Kong. And really, I'll conclude by saying that considering when asked which country in the entire world that he most admires, our Liberal Prime Minister said China's basic dictatorship and its ability to get things done, we should listen when the Prime Minister tells us who he really is. And with these 3 internet control and censorship bills, Madam Speaker, I do believe he's made his intentions quite clear, and we should all be very, very concerned.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Well, according to Freedom House, Madam Speaker, an organization that's been around since before the Second World War, Canada is the 5th freest country in the world, but I'm sure that the Conservatives know better than they do. But it's interesting, this member brought up the issue about dictatorships, and so, but I heard her talk about what Twitter was saying, but I didn't hear her give her, she's going to be able to respond. I'm asking her a question. So the question to her is that she told us what Twitter is saying, but she didn't tell us if she agrees with what Twitter's saying. And I'll go back to a comment from the member from Thornhill that said, Canada will also become the first country to regulate online content created by people living in Canada. We will be in good company with dictators like Iran, Turkey, and North Korea. What a bunch of manufactured outrage, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering if the member can comment and answer the question of whether or not she agrees with the comment from Twitter and whether or not she agrees with the comment from the member from Thornhill if we will actually be similar to countries that I just listed.
The Honourable Member for Kildona St. Paul.
Speaker, I think what's really concerning and what I alluded to and discussed in my speech is giving this Liberal government the ability to decide what is misinformation and disinformation is very concerning. Just the other day, our critic and our Shadow Minister for Defence quoted an Ottawa Citizen news article talking about the military exercise of surveillance that flew around the convoy and was taking photos, recording audio. They said it's a training, fine. She didn't include anything that wasn't in a mainstream, far from conservative publication, the Ottawa Citizen. And yet the Prime Minister of this country said that she was guilty of spreading misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Sure. I want to quote a few key sections of this bill to my honourable colleague. 2.1 says a person who uses a social media service to upload programs for transmission over the internet and reception by other users of the service and who's not the provider of the service or the provider's affiliate or the agent or mandatory of either of them does not, by the fact of that use, carry on a broadcasting undertaking for the purposes of this Act. It says an online undertaking that provides a social media service does not, for the purposes of this Act, exercise programming control over programs uploaded by a user of the service. And finally, it says this Act shall be construed and applied in a manner that is consistent with the freedom of expression and journalistic, creative, and programming independence enjoyed by broadcasting undertakings. So I'm just wondering what my honourable colleagues' take on those are. Does she not feel that those make clear that users of the internet are not covered as broadcasters and that this Act will be construed consistent with the concept of freedom of expression?
Member for Kildona and St. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question. Section 4.2 of the bill actually provides an exception to the exception that allows CRTC to regulate user-generated content. Further, actually, under Section 7.7 in the bill, that's where it actually provides Cabinet, this Liberal government's Cabinet, the ability to, in essence, dictate the policies of the CRTC concerning online content. So again, very concerning. This is new powers that did not exist before under CRTC for radio and television that is now being, that the Liberal government is taking for themselves to dictate what we read and see online.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Kelowna Lake Country. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for her intervention. Bill C-11 proposes to give the CRTC the ability to, quote, make orders imposing conditions on the carrying on of broadcast undertakings, unquote, in 18 different categories of operations. Now, we know that it's been now just past 2 weeks where we hit the 500-day mark where there was a motion in this House for the government to create a suicide hotline, 988 hotline, and they tasked the CRTC with this, and they haven't been able to implement this. They have had consultations, and they haven't been able to implement this. So I'm wondering what kind of confidence the member has in the CRTC to take on this giant new mandate and new project, considering some of their recent record. Thank you.
Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
The answer is, Madam Speaker, and I think the member for her question is, I don't have a lot of confidence at all. And I certainly don't have a lot of confidence in this government to maintain transparency. For example, this House compelled the Liberal government 4 different times, to provide the Winnipeg lab documents. For the first time in a century, we brought someone to the bar, compelling them under the powers that we have in this House, the democratic powers, to bring those documents, and he refused to do so. And then the Liberals went and sued the Speaker for it. So I don't have any confidence whatsoever that these folks will maintain transparency.
Debate. The